Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. Today's video, we are going to unwrap a common question that I get. Many of you have noticed in my mastering tutorials that I often use what's called stem mastering. So we're going to talk about what stem mastering is, what are the advantages of using stem mastering versus standard mastering, and just some things to consider with how you can create stems for your mastering process and how to deliver these. So let's go ahead and dive in. All the way from the start, I can feel it in my heart, like all the way from the start. So I've got a recent stem mastering session here, and you're going to notice that we only have 4 stems, okay? So I've got a mixed instrumental or beat stem. I've got the lead vocal, so that includes all the processing, all the effects, reverb, delay. I've got a background vocal for the lead, and then I've chosen to separate another background vocal because this was a different singer. So I just wanted to be able to have control over that blend of the different singers if I needed it here in the mastering process. Depending on the session and how much flexibility you need or how much you're going to give your mastering engineer, your stems are going to look different. I do a lot of stem mastering where I simply have a beat stem or an instrumental stem and a vocal stem. So that still gives you a lot more control and flexibility than just having the single mixed wave. Other cases, there was a session I just did where I had effects stems. So I had the reverb for the entire vocal, I had the delay for the entire vocal track, and I can control those independently. If there was a section I felt was a little bit too washy, I could just control the balance of that reverb. So again, how many stems and what you choose to group together for these stem tracks is totally up to you. But experiment and kind of figure out what works best for your sessions. And depending on the artist, what you're getting, that's going to inform, what stems you request and which ones are going to work best. So why and when would you opt to utilize stem mastering versus standard mastering? I'm glad you asked, because there's a lot of good reasons. And the main one is for balancing purposes in the mastering process. So I want to clarify that usually when the mix is done properly and we get that single wave file, everything's balanced. You're not necessarily going to want to be, trying to change anything at that point in the master. However, it does give your engineer or you some flexibility to have some stems here to just adjust levels accordingly. For instance, if I play this back,
right now you're just like everybody else. Think that love and kiss all you need.
So let's just say I played that back and I've identified that the vocal is just a little bit too loud. And this does happen quite often where I'll get mixes where that vocal is just not sitting quite right in the pocket. Everything else about the mix is great. So there's a serious puzzle for me to solve if I have a single mixed wave, right? So there's some things I can do, like with Ozone 9, where we have master rebalance. This is actually a surprisingly effective thing that I can control the vocal, the bass, or the drums in an individual mixed wave file. However, the better case, the ideal case, is just to have this vocal track and I can just adjust it.
Right now you're just like everybody else. Think that love and kiss all you need.
So I just turn it down to dB, whatever I need to do, and we're done. Second reason is to have some tonal control over these individual tracks, specifically the beat and the vocal. So I'll give you an example here. Let's just say in this lead vocal, I identified some harsh mid frequencies that maybe weren't tackled in the mix. I can just put my multiband processor or my dynamic EQ or processor on that vocal directly. We can dial in the problematic area here in the mids on the vocal file, rather than trying to do that on our master bus. So when we're doing that on the master bus, we're going to be applying that, we're trying to tame the mid in a vocal, but yet we're going to be affecting all the frequency information in the beat, all the backgrounds or whatever else that we don't necessarily want to be affecting those frequencies for. Finally, stem mastering is a very efficient option for doing mastering outside of the mixing session. So once again, I've talked about doing the mixing, the mastering in the same session, which I do a lot of times if I'm able to do that. However, this is a great example. This session, I broke into stems because our mixing session for this song was enormous. So let me just go ahead and see if we can open that up. So this is the final mix, right? So I did them in separate sessions. Let's just open that up and we'll see what we've got here. So this is the mixing session, and we've got something like, let's see, how much did we end up with? 138 tracks, okay? And there's a lot of automation, a lot of plugins used in this session, and just a lot of processing. So when I was getting towards the end of this mix, my computer was just really struggling. And once we get, towards doing processing on the stereo bus, mastering processing, things like limiters, all that type of stuff, it tends to be very resource intensive. So if you've already done a lot of processing in your mix, maybe you even have some production elements in there, once you get down to trying to do mastering processing in that session, you're going to run into a lot of issues with your CPU just not being able to do that, which is what happened here. Once everything was stemmed out, I could focus all of my CPU resources onto the stereo bus processing, which again, I have some very intensive things going on. I've got the IO plugin, which is disabled right now, but that is sending the signals in and out of my solid state logic fusion. That's a resource intensive process. I've got some other things like Studio Rack with a lot of processing, Ozone. These are all things that I would really rather have all of my processing power devoted to in a separate session. Just to be clear, stem mastering is not a requirement. You can still get great masters with a single mixed wave. This is just if you want to give your engineer some more flexibility, allow them to have the final touch in terms of balance and some tonal things for individual elements. Maybe you're less experienced at this point as an engineer. That's all perfectly fine. This is just an extra option for you to get the best results. If you learned anything in the video, please like, subscribe, and consider sharing. We'll talk to you soon.